The day I realized my body still remembered desire, I was standing in my daughter's kitchen, and the man who woke it wasn't my husband. I'm 61 years old. I've been married for 37 years. I have 3 grown children, 5 grandchildren, and a life that looks, from the outside, like everything a woman my age should want. Comfortable, predictable, safe. But 6 months ago, something inside me cracked open, and I haven't been able to close it since. If you're still watching, please, stay with me. Because what I'm about to tell you, I've never said out loud to anyone. And after today, I don't know what happens next. It started the way these things always start, innocently. My daughter Emma had just moved into a new house in Portland. One of those beautiful old craftsman homes with the wide front porch and the creaky wooden floors. She was overwhelmed. Boxes everywhere, a toddler underfoot, her husband traveling for work. So I did what any mother would do. I drove up from Sacramento to help her settle in. That's when I met Daniel. He was her neighbor. 58, recently divorced. A high school history teacher with kind eyes and hands that still had calluses from weekend carpentry projects. Emma introduced us over the fence one afternoon while I was unpacking her garden tools. He offered to help move some furniture. I said yes because it seemed rude not to. I wasn't looking for anything. I want you to understand that. I wasn't some bored housewife hunting for excitement. My marriage to Richard had gone quiet over the years. Yes, but I'd made peace with that. We had our routine, Friday night dinners, Sunday crosswords, separate bedrooms since his snoring got bad. But that felt practical, not tragic. But when Daniel's hand brushed mine reaching for the same box, something jolted through me that I thought had died 20 years ago. Subscribe now, because what I did next, I still can't believe I'm the kind of person who would do it. I stayed in Portland longer than I planned. A week became 10 days. I told Richard that Emma needed more help than I'd expected, which was true. What I didn't tell him was that every morning, after Emma left for work, and I'd gotten my grandson settled with his toys, I would see Daniel in his backyard, and we would talk. Just talk, at first. We talked about books, about the students he'd taught who went on to do remarkable things, about my brief career as a nurse before the kids came, and how I sometimes missed the feeling of being needed in that urgent, life-or-death way. About his ex-wife who'd left him for someone younger. About my marriage, though I was careful at first, loyal even in my complaints. He listened the way Richard hadn't in decades. Like my words mattered. Like I mattered. And slowly, so slowly I could pretend it wasn't happening, the space between us began to shrink. One morning, I brought him coffee. Another morning, he brought me pastries from the bakery downtown. We started texting. Nothing inappropriate. Just constant. Good morning messages. Articles we thought the other would enjoy. By the end of the second week, I was checking my phone every 5 minutes like a teenager. When he asked if I wanted to take a walk through the rose garden near his house, I knew I should say no. I said yes anyway. The rose garden was empty that Tuesday morning, mid-September. The flowers past their peak, but still beautiful in that fading, desperate way. We walked slowly, and somewhere between the pink roses and the white ones, Daniel told me I was beautiful. No one had called me beautiful in so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen that way. Not as someone's mother, not as someone's wife, just as a woman. A person who still had a body, a face, a presence worth noticing. I should have left right then. I should have thanked him politely and created distance. Instead, I asked him what he meant. Keep watching, because what happened next is where everything changed, and I need you to understand how it felt, even if you can't forgive it. He stopped walking, turned to face me fully, and he said very quietly that he hadn't felt this way about anyone since his divorce. That talking to me was the best part of his day, that he knew it was complicated, knew I was married, knew my daughter lived next door, but that he couldn't pretend he didn't feel what he felt. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he could hear it. I told him I had to go, but I didn't move. And then he reached out, very carefully, and touched my face. Just his fingertips against my cheek. The gentlest possible touch. And my entire body woke up. I don't mean that poetically. I mean 30 years of numbness just evaporated. I felt heat spread through me, this aching, terrifying aliveness that I thought had been buried under mortgage payments and carpool schedules and reading glasses and all the ways you learn to be invisible as you age. When he leaned in, I didn't stop him. We kissed in the rose garden like teenagers, hidden behind the trellises, and I felt more alive in those 3 minutes than I had in the entire previous decade. When we finally pulled apart, I was shaking, not from cold, from the realization that I wanted more, that I would risk everything for more. I went back to my daughter's house in a daze, played with my grandson, made dinner, called Richard, and lied smoothly about how the day had been. That night, Daniel texted me, "I can't stop thinking about you." I should have shut it down. Instead, I wrote back, "Me either. If you're still here, hit subscribe, because the next 3 months were the most dangerous of my life, and I'm still not sure I survived them." I went home to Sacramento the next day, kissed my husband hello, unpacked my suitcase, returned to my normal life. Except now, nothing felt normal. Daniel and I texted constantly, every day. Long messages about everything and nothing. He sent me photos of his classroom, his morning coffee, the sunset from his back deck. I sent him pictures of my garden, the book I was reading, my grandson's latest drawing. We talked on the phone when Richard was out playing golf, FaceTime when I was supposedly running errands, and every conversation ended the same way. "I miss you. I wish you were here. When can I see you again?" It was madness. I knew it was madness. But it also felt like oxygen after decades of holding my breath. 6 weeks later, I invented a reason to go back to Portland. Emma needed help with the baby. That's what I told Richard. He barely looked up from his newspaper. This time, I only stayed at Emma's house for appearances. At night, after she went to bed, I would slip out and walk next door. Daniel would be waiting. We didn't have sex, not that first visit, but we did everything else. We sat on his couch and talked for hours, fell asleep in each other's arms, kissed until my lips were swollen. I let him touch me in ways Richard hadn't touched me in years, and I touched him back, marveling at how different his body felt, how new and familiar at once. I felt guilty. Of course I felt guilty. But the guilt was quieter than the want. Stay with me now, because this is where everything started to unravel. The third time I visited Portland, Emma started asking questions. Why was I coming up so often? Why did I seem distracted? Why did I keep checking my phone? I made excuses, but I could see the suspicion forming in her eyes. And then, one morning, she saw me coming back from Daniel's house. She was in her kitchen, looking out the window at dawn, and she watched me cross his lawn, smooth down my hair, slip back into her guest room. She didn't say anything. Not right away. But that afternoon, while we were folding laundry together, she asked me, very carefully, if something was going on with Daniel. I lied directly to my daughter's face. "Of course not," I said. "He's just a friend. He's lonely since the divorce." She wanted to believe me. I could see her deciding to believe me. But I also saw the doubt that didn't quite leave her eyes. That night, Daniel told me he was falling in love with me. And I realized, with absolute clarity, that I was falling in love with him too. Which meant I had a choice to make, a real one. Stay in my marriage, end this thing with Daniel, try to rebuild what Richard and I had lost. Or leave. Blow up my entire life. Hurt everyone I loved for the chance at something real, something vital, something that made me feel like a whole person again. I thought about it for weeks. And here's what I still can't admit out loud to anyone but you. I almost chose Daniel. Click subscribe if you need to know what stopped me, because it wasn't what you think. I was packing. Actually packing a suitcase in my closet while Richard was at his weekly poker game. I'd drafted the letter I would leave on the kitchen table. I'd found a lawyer. I'd opened a separate bank account. I was doing it. And then my daughter called. She was crying. Her marriage was falling apart. Her husband had been having an emotional affair with a coworker. Nothing physical, he swore. But he'd been confiding in this other woman instead of Emma, sharing his feelings, his fears, his dreams. And Emma felt betrayed, destroyed, like the man she'd built a life with had been slowly giving himself to someone else while she wasn't looking. She sobbed on the phone about how naive she'd been, how she should have seen the signs, how it didn't matter that he hadn't slept with this woman. The intimacy was the betrayal, the secrecy, the constant texting, and the emotional investment in someone who wasn't his wife. And I listened to my daughter describe my own sins back to me. I unpacked that suitcase. I deleted Daniel's number. I told him in one final, horrible phone call that I couldn't do this anymore. That I loved him. And I did. I truly did. But that I couldn't become the villain in my own daughter's life. That I couldn't model for my grandchildren that marriage was disposable. That I couldn't live with being the person who destroyed her family's idea of me. He cried. I cried. It was the worst conversation of my life. And then I went back to my marriage. Richard never knew. Emma never knew for certain. Daniel moved to Seattle 6 months later. A new teaching position, a fresh start. I stayed. But here's the truth I can't escape. The thing that haunts me every single day. I'm still not sure I made the right choice. My marriage didn't improve because I stayed. Richard and I are still distant, still polite, still living like roommates who share a mortgage. I didn't save anything by staying. I just chose a different kind of loneliness. And sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep, and the house is dark, and Richard is snoring in the other room, I wonder what my life would look like if I'd been brave enough to choose myself. I wonder if Daniel still thinks about me. I wonder if I wasted the last chance I had at real happiness because I was too afraid of what people would think. I'm 61 years old, and I felt something I thought was gone forever. Heat. Desire. The electric possibility of being wanted, not for what you do or who you take care of, but just for who you are. And I let it go. So here's my question for you. Was I right? Did I do the honorable thing, or did I just choose a more acceptable kind of suffering? Leave your answer in the comments. Because honestly, I'm still trying to figure it out myself. And if this story meant something to you, if you've ever felt invisible, or wanted something you couldn't have, or wondered if it's too late to start over, subscribe. Share this. Let me know I'm not alone in this. Because some days I'm not sure I am.